Hey guys, welcome back to the show. It's great to be with you again. It's been a while since I did a video podcast, but I'm happy to bring this one to you this week because this week I get to have an awesome conversation with a guy you may have heard of, you may not be familiar with, but if you're into outdoor films and that kind of thing, you probably know. My guest this week is Donnie Vincent, and Donnie is a really, really cool, well-spoken, thoughtful guy. He's been in some great, like I said, outdoor and hunting films. His most recent one, I think, is called Winds of Adak, where he goes on a really cool caribou hunt on the island of Adak in Alaska. So we have a great conversation this week about the hunting industry, about life, about films, and, you know, he actually does a fair bit of asking me questions about my journey and my what's brought me to where I am now. And so, we get into pretty good amount of detail about my past and kind of, that I've been open about my past of addiction and recovery and weight loss and just my journey into this world. So it's a really great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to Donnie. He's a great guy. Something I like to do, which I haven't done in a little while, but is whenever I have a guest on and a scripture comes to mind that kind of personifies that person, I like to add that in here. So the one that I found for Donnie that I thought was cool is actually 1 Samuel 16:18, and it's someone is actually describing David, which will later become King David, the guy who killed Goliath. So the verse goes like this. One of the young men answered, "Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a man of good presence, and the Lord is with him." So I thought that was a cool description that kind of fit Donnie really well. Like I said, he's a really well-spoken guy, thoughtful guy, articulate, and a man of good presence, prudent in speech, and I really see him as like a man of valor. So he really fits that warrior archetype that a lot of us men have deep within us and strive to let out. So it's a great episode. I do want to ask you guys again, it's been a while, so please, if you like the podcast, it's super helpful if you can leave me a rating and even a written review on Apple Podcasts. It's really helpful. And if you do that, I will send you out some swag from the podcast and appreciation for that. Also, these video podcasts are a lot of work. I've mentioned it before, and I'm not complaining, but if you do like the podcast, if you like the YouTube podcast or whatever, just do me a solid, go to YouTube right now. You can find my channel by searching Hunter McWaters. That's my name, Hunter, and my last name, McWaters. That's how you can find my channel, and just hit that subscribe button. Like, I'm really trying to build out my YouTube audience because I am going to be releasing some hunting films coming up later this year. I'm waiting on a new computer now to get that editing going, but please just it'd be a huge favor to me if you could just go to YouTube, search my name, Hunter McWaters, and subscribe. Even if you don't really watch YouTube, you're not into the video podcast, that's fine. Just bumping up my subscribers would be a huge, huge boost for me. So please do that. Also, just one thing to note, during the interview, there is a little bit of construction noise. The place where Donnie was recording was having some construction done. Not a huge deal, but if you hear some weird noises, it's just construction noise. Just, it's like I said, it's not a big deal. Just keep listening. It's a great conversation. And so, yeah, I like I said, there's a lot of back and forth. He asks me a lot about my past, and I go into some details about stuff I haven't really talked about. So it's a really awesome conversation. I think you guys will really enjoy it. Donnie's a very entertaining guy to talk to and to listen to. So again, thank you as always for listening. If you have anything you want to reach out to me about, you can find me on Instagram at The Hunter's Quest, and I'm happy to answer your questions or talk to you about stuff. But anyway, without a whole lot more, let's just go ahead and jump into this one, guys. I think you're really going to like it. And please, go ahead and share this with friends and family if you enjoy it. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Anyway, guys, I'm here with my guest today. Really excited to talk to Mr. Donnie Vincent. How you doing, man?
Good. Thank you for having me. It's exciting to get the invitation.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. It's exciting to talk to you. So, I got to ask about your cabin because it looks pretty sweet. Where are you at right now?
Yep. This is essentially in Hudson, Wisconsin, northwest Wisconsin. It's under construction today. Having all the outside logs sanded, and so there's a little bit of background noise. But
Oh, yeah. Okay.
it's a cool place. This is where we have Sick Manta. It's bare right now. I have, believe it or not, there was a TV commercial filmed here yesterday
Oh, really?
for a chimney sweep company that I nothing to do with. They just asked if they could film here as a
Oh,
location.
nice.
And so, but when there's two women that produced the shoot, and when they came in, they were like, I have sheep skulls up there
Uh,
and brown bear skulls and black bear skulls, and they're like, yeah, everything dead has to go, and then I had all my recurve bows were in the corner there, and they're like, all the weapons have to go.
oh,
I have to
man.
get rid of all the, so everything is bare. But yeah, it's coming along. It's gonna be a long project, but it's a perfect place for our production studio, for our production house.
Okay, so it's not your home, it's your office, or is it both?
Office. I mean, I
Okay.
stay here a lot. I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's primarily an office.
Cool, man. So, just for folks that may not be familiar with you, and I just personally I know a little bit about you, but I'd love to hear your story. How you got into telling stories and just all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm. The root of it all is that I'm in love with wildlife and have been for as long as I can remember. Um, Burying my face and my mind into wildlife books and hunting books and fishing books, and as I was getting older, I just spent as much time as possible outside.
And you
Always
grew up in
wanted to.
Wisconsin,
I grew up in Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Grew up
Okay.
in Connecticut. I actually moved to central Minnesota when I was
I'm Minnesota.
like 15, and
Okay.
then went to college at the University of Minnesota, and then just found a house that I liked. There's a river that separates Wisconsin and Minnesota called the St. Croix, and I just found a house that I liked on the St. Croix. So
Is that where you kind of got your love of the North Country? Is growing up a little bit up there?
yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's just like, as far as I'm concerned, any place that I can be where there are seasons and there's actually wildlife and fish, and then a state with regulations that allow you to kind of get out and enjoy those things,
Yeah.
well, then I can call that place home.
Yeah. Cool.
Essentially, yeah. But yeah, I've just always been fixated on wildlife, man, and I made it my professional career as a biologist, and I did that for a very short time. It was really funny. I don't think I've ever really talked about this, but I really considered going into medical school
Hmm.
because I also really enjoy the human body, and I really enjoy kind of the blood and guts of it. I
Nice.
enjoy seeing out how the pieces fit together and how the systems flow, and I like scenarios of high risk. The
Hmm.
idea of burying myself into a situation and saving someone else's life is really attractive to me,
Yeah.
and just to help, to kind of fight for those that can't fight for themselves, to help those that need a helping hand, and like, so I
Hmm.
really considered going to medical school. But so I actually worked in a hospital for a really long time. I worked as a cardiovascular technician while I was in school. And then, but yeah, my whole life has been about being outside. It's about being around wildlife. And I know a lot of guys are, as they say, addicted to hunting and fishing, and they want to make it their career or whatever it is. But it was never that for me. I was just always addicted to, I wasn't even addicted. I had just a hunger to
Hmm.
see the animals, to learn about animals, but then to see the animals. And then when I learned about hunting and I learned about all these big adventures that somebody could go on, I started doing them as early as I could. And I mean, like, big adventures for me were driving to northern Minnesota with a buddy of mine to go duck hunting. That was
Yeah.
camping on a lake, shooting bluebills or mallards, and eating them at the campfire. Like, that was a
Yeah.
massive adventure to me, and still is today. Like, I still look at that. If I'm going to the Arctic Circle for 30 days, or I'm driving with a buddy to northern Minnesota to go shoot bluebills, it's the exact same to me. If you were
Nice.
coming over and we were going to grab our 22 rifles and we were going to go on a squirrel hunt here in Wisconsin, it would be the same. It's the exact
Nice.
same. And so, I don't even really, there's a series of events that kind of led to me being a filmmaker and
Hmm.
telling stories. I left my biology career behind essentially, and just realized that I didn't want to work my way up into an office. I didn't want to work up my way up into academia. I wasn't that successful as of a student anyway.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of took, man. I started telling stories, and had a couple of hunts shot by photographers, and wrote a couple of stories and talked through hundreds of stories, and one thing kind of led to another, and I met a crew that were really talented filmmakers and storytellers and production guys, and we kind of, it was a band of three: myself, Kyle Nicolite, and William Altman, and we just decided, like, hey, let's start a company, and that's Sick
Nice.
Manta. That was 10 years ago, 11
Nice,
years
man.
ago. Yeah.
So do you do any like shooting and stuff like that, or are you mainly talent, as they say?
Yeah, I'm talent, as they say. I'm I'm either in front of the camera. I love photography. Like I'm actually starting to pick it up and shoot more and more. I took a couple of classes when I was in college, and so I really love cameras, and I really love, like we're all, like, my team and we all work together. Like,
Yeah.
If I see something, I'm like, hey, come here, like, let's shoot this and let's do this. Like, we're always scheming together. But, and then in our production work, which is funny, William Altman just did a podcast with Daniel Vitalis from Maine, the Rewild, Rewild Yourself podcast, I believe. And so, like, when we go do commercial shoots, William was lamenting that it was awesome because I carry his stuff around for him. So even when we're doing commercial shoots, I'm working as a grip, if you will.
Nice,
and so, like, literally carrying Pelican cases and setting up shots. So
you guys are doing commercial shoots as well as making your films. And if people haven't seen, you have I guess the newest one is Winds of Adak.
Yep. We have 4 titles out right now.
Okay. And then I also watched The Other Side, which is about bear hunting, which is pretty cool. I haven't seen the other ones yet, but definitely recommend people check them out.
Yeah, The Rivers Divide is our first one, about a deer hunt in North Dakota. And then we have Terra Nova, 3 Days on the Island. It's about a woodland caribou hunt in Newfoundland. And then The Other Side, which is about bears. And then The Winds of Adak, which is about caribou hunting out on the Aleutian Chain. It's a gnarly place. Dangerous.
So I went on my first trip last year to Alaska. We did a walk-in caribou hunt.
Yep.
And so that would be East Central Alaska, between like Chicken and Eagle, if you know the area.
Yep. I do. Yep.
And there's some areas up there that are closed to combustion engines, and we were in those types of areas, and man, it just changed my life, man. What an awesome place.
Yeah.
So what, go ahead.
I'll be heading up in September, which will be, I don't know, my 30th trip, 40th trip, something like that.
Yeah, I can't get enough. So I'm actually leaving August 20th. I'm going to Kodiak. So
that place is incredible.
Yeah,
you've never been, obviously, right? Because you didn't go last year.
No.
Yeah, that place is incredible. You hunting deer?
Yeah, I'm carrying a couple deer tags, and I got a caribou tag too, just in case. Although the plan is for now is probably to fly into an alpine lake and camp. So I think last we heard the caribou were kind of sticking to the lower elevations, but would love to, do a combo if possible. But mainly deer is kind of on the plate.
Yeah. Oh, Kodiak is, I mean, it's stupendous.
Yeah.
And you'll see the bears, like they're just as stupendous. They're amazing to see and be around, and they make the trip. I'll murder the quote, but Jack O'Connor has a quote where he talks about how much more interesting the forests are when there's a monster among them.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. When you're not necessarily the apex predator.
Yeah, so much more interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So something you mentioned earlier about like wanting to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves and stuff like that, and it reminds me of this guy that I've been listening to lately called Greg Amundsen, who talks a lot about the warrior archetype that a lot of men have, and that's part of it, is that want to stand up for someone who's not able to stand up for themselves and protect and fix and save a life. And I think we all kind of are wired to want to be a hero, and I think that a lot of the warrior thing and the hunter thing go hand in hand.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
I agree. I've never done anything militarily, and I've never been in a combat situation. I've been in a couple of situations which I would consider to be very, very hairy in Bangladesh, and some situations in Russia where I had plenty of machine guns pointed at me and I didn't want them pointed at me. But it was hardly a military situation. It was just very aggressive people in very aggressive countries and very
Was that on a
rough
hunt?
situations. One was biology and the other one was hunting.
Okay.
I was studying tigers in Bangladesh, and that was a really gnarly place. Very, very aggressive place.
I mean, I got to
And
ask the story on that.
yeah, it was just going through different customs and going through different checkpoints, and then having groups of militia, if you will, stopping convoys and going car to car with, with AKs and searching people, robbing people. I don't know if anyone was ever murdered in the convoys that I was stopped in, but it's a pretty common thing for people to be kidnapped and then held for ransom and then murdered. Yeah. I think everyone that gets kidnapped is basically killed, but there are definitely some. I'm sitting in a car and I'm with my professor, and I'm like, I was kind of freaking out. There's actually a piece of jungle next to us. I don't know if I've even ever told this story, but these guys are coming down with machine guns and smashing the windows and looking in the cars and dragging people out. And I was looking at the jungle, which is probably like a 150-yard run or something like that. But there was pretty good, like maybe knee high to waist high vegetation between. I was like, man, should we make a run for it? And he's an older guy. The guy that I was doing work with, he was basically like Indiana Jones. Literally like one of the toughest. He was probably 65 years old at the time. One of the toughest men I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
And I'm like, do we make a run for it? And he's like, they'll mow us down, Donnie. Just stay. And so like they came to our car and they didn't break the window, but they smashed the window pretty hard with the gun barrel, but it didn't break. And then I just kept I almost acted like I couldn't hear him.
Yeah.
And I just kept facing forward. And then one of them yelled about another car, like a few cars away. And it took there were three guys next to our car, 2 or 3 guys. And it took their attention and they went over there and then they never came back. Wow. And then there was a bus that was lit on fire. And then we ended up scooting around the bus and leaving.
That does sound sketchy.
Stuff like that. But I do think, I've been around a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but several Green Berets, Scout Snipers, Navy SEALs, and then just some, call it normal or regular infantry guys. Yeah. And I think there's a really close commonality. I mean, those guys have a really special set of skills, and I think it lives between their ears. I think a lot of guys want to think about Navy SEALs being super tough.
Right.
And Green Berets being super tough. And I don't think that's true at all. I think everything that they have lives between their ears. I think they're, as a group of SEALs or snipers, I think they're incredibly intellectual. Mm-hmm. And then they have this, have this gene of not being stubborn, but knowing that they don't have to give up. Yeah. They know that they have one more step. I think that's the secret sauce, is that a lot of guys are like, I'm out, I'm exhausted. I can't do this anymore. I can't see straight. I don't even know where I am anymore. Yeah. And they fail out whether they want to or not. But I think the guys that make it and that exceed in those programs, I think they're very, very intellectual. And then I think they have that little twisted fate in their heads of saying they always realize they can go one more second. And that one more second earns them a minute, earns them an hour, earns them a day. Yeah. And then their lives continue, but they're special people and
for sure,
very much appreciated.
Yeah. I've heard people say before, when you think you're done, you still have 40% left. I think they just know that,
How scary is that to think of what we could accomplish?
I know, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, and then going back to the storytelling thing, I mean, I feel like story has been a part of human existence for going back to cave paintings and a lot of them, the storytellers were hunters coming back and telling the stories. What role do you think does story play in the life of a man, or maybe just you and a hunter,
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's history, right? I think it's us learning as we're as we're progressing and we're finding our own wisdom, it's relaying that wisdom and doing so with some color and with some detail.
Yeah.
You end up getting a story out of it, and then you end up really evoking emotion and a response from the person. And like I said to you earlier, you said, how'd you get into this? And I said, I shouldn't have, but I basically glossed over it and said, I did some magazine articles and I did some photo shoots and stuff like that. But really, my career just started to kind of take off as I started working with individual groups. And I did a shoot with a photographer named John Hafner.
Mm-hmm.
He's a professional photo guy in the outdoor, industry. He's super talented. And he shot me for, we were working on another project together.
Mm-hmm.
And he found out that I was going on a sheep hunt in the Yukon territories, hunting at a place that I've always wanted to hunt at. A good friend of mine, Chris McKinnon, owns an outfit called Bonnet Plume Outfitters.
Mm-hmm.
Really fantastic place. And I was going there for the first time, and John found out about it. And he goes, "Hey, I'm supposed to be shooting an adventure piece for Peterson's Hunting, a cover story for Peterson's Hunting magazine. Would you be the subject matter?" And I said, "Yeah, man, I'd love that." And we worked out the details, and he came along on the trip and he shot all these beautiful photographs. Nice. And for the first time ever, when I was coming home from a trip, I had all these assets to literally show people, like, here's the ram. Like, you see, we climbed up this drainage, and really kind of took people on the trip with me. And then that led to a conversation with some of the gentlemen at Sitka Gear. I ended up meeting guys like Jonathan Hart, and then they introduced me to a couple other guys over here who introduced me. So it just kind of started to be this network of, hey, you're doing some really pretty cool things, both pretty, I mean, visual pretty, and cool, just very adventurous, and you're good at articulating what happened and what you're doing. And so we'd like to use you over here. Nice. So then those things started stepstones. And then I started with my own crew. Cause when you work in this business, or any business probably, and like, whether you're a medical doctor, a race car driver, a lawyer, whatever it is, when you work for someone, you're shaping your talents, but under their umbrella. And so then you kind of like keep mitigating up. And then eventually, if you're that type of person, you say, what you're doing is awesome, but I want to do it slightly differently. So I'm going to step over here and do my own umbrella. And that's what we did 10 years ago. Like, I wouldn't be here without Sitka Gear. I wouldn't be here without some of the super talented people that I've got to meet and work with. And that kind of would open up another door and open up another door. And so, it's super important. It's super important for us to relay history. It's super important for us to identify who we are, to teach young people, to teach our peers, to teach even our elders. Like, the fact that the notion of thinking that if you're up here in age, more than this guy down here in age is a ridiculous fashion. Like, there's contribution that slips both ways. And so I think story is hugely important.
Yeah, I think you have done a really good job of portraying hunting in a very positive light. I think that's also something that's really important, right now, especially as there's more and more antis and that kind of thing. Has that been like an intentional kind of choice on your part, or is that just kind of who you are, or a little both?
A little both. Originally, when I started writing content for hunters, I left kind of the center line of my thinking was as I was growing up and hunting with different guys, I really struggled finding hunters that I related to. I go hunt with guys and I'd say, like, I'd hear them say things and literally make my skin crawl. Yeah. And they just say, and I'm splitting hairs here, but they'd say something like super macho. And I'd just be like, yeah, I don't really like that. Like, I'll give you for instance, like, they'd shoot a deer or something and say, yeah, I got that son of a bitch, and I just, I wouldn't like that, and so like, I always kind of like ping ponged away. And then I mostly started hunting by myself. But when I first started doing some professional work, I wrote a couple of pieces for a film that we were working on. And our editor at Sick Manta, Kyle Nicolite, I handed him the script and he's like, "This is terrible, Donnie." He's like, I wasn't calling a deer a son of a bitch, but basically he's like, you wrote this for hunters.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. And he's like, no, you need to write this for yourself. Be yourself, write this for yourself. And then if people watch it, great, we'll make another one. If people don't watch it, we move on and do something else. But if we don't do it honestly, then we'll never really understand what we're doing. And so one of the things that I consciously do now that I'm writing for a film is both to tell the story of what really happened, not sensationalize it, but really tell the story of what happened, because what really happened is often dangerous enough, uncomfortable enough, exciting enough, beautiful enough. Like, you don't have to say we were hanging from our fingertips on a cliff, right? You don't have to embellish this stuff, which a lot of people do. But in doing so, I will write in a manner so that people that have questions about hunting or are concerned about hunting or don't understand hunting can maybe garner some answers from the writing and what we do in our films to maybe educate them to ask some better questions, or to really ask different questions of themselves or hunters they have in their lives, but just to kind of not to sway them or not to persuade them, but to inject more critical conversation between hunters and non-hunters and even anti-hunters or whatever. But just kind of like, I don't want them coming away from the film with their arms crossed going, nope, hate this, I'm not buying a word of it. I want them coming away from the film saying, now I don't really understand or know where my line is, and I see the guy in the film doesn't really know or understand the line of where he is, because I also have questions all the time. How could we not? Things are changing all the time. So if he's asking himself questions as a hunter, it seems to be I should probably be asking myself questions as a non-hunter or anti-hunter. Yeah. And there's probably, there's answers that sway both places, and you can be against hunting, but there's no way that you can say it's wrong or unethical or immoral or can't be done. Like, it's impossible to argue the benefits of hunting when you do it in a particular manner with particular species and with regulation. And really all of this stems from us being provided for. If we weren't delivering food to people's front doors into the grocery store, there wouldn't be a single person against hunting. Oh yeah. Not one.
Yeah, for sure, man. So we were talking a little bit about kind of the industry and like perceptions of hunters and stuff like that. I'm interested to know like your thoughts on like what are some bright kind of spots in the hunting industry / community, and what are maybe some areas that could use some improvement?
That's a good question. Bright spots, I would say, and this has maybe been beat up a little bit, but I like what Jason Harrison did with Kuyu. I liked where Jason and I didn't always get along, but I really liked how he designed his clothing. And I'm not talking about a product necessarily, but I just liked his approach to how he fostered his gear, and that he developed it with this hard line of hunting was the DNA. And I really like that about Jason, that he developed this line of gear, sold it to hunters at a better price point, is better gear. I like the technical aspect that he brought to things. He's a very smart guy, very driven guy. And I liked the subculture that he cultivated and the group that he cultivated. Same with Sitka Gear. But Sitka Gear they did it okay. I think Jason did it beautifully. As far as bright spots go, it's really tricky for me to articulate. I think everything that I kind of fall to for a bright spot is from fostering invention, right? I think there are some really brilliant hunters out there. Cody D'Acquisto and his dad, Andre D'Acquisto, they're whitetail hunters out of Iowa. They're originally out of Wisconsin, but out of Iowa. They have Lone Wolf custom gear. They make tree stands.
Yeah, I've got a Lone Wolf climber.
Yeah, they're incredible. Andre and Cody are incredible at inventing gear, and they do so. I say this because it stems from them being amazing hunters
Yeah.
and really having their finger on the pulse of how they want to engage with wild places
Mm-hmm.
and kind of move around. I think there's some really beautiful writing out there that people are doing, and an actual painting. I think there's some really beautiful wildlife work out there, but there's a lot that I'm concerned about, right? So I just found out a couple of weeks ago, I was at a friend of mine's house, Lee Chose. He's a photographer out of Minnesota, super talented guy. He owns Chose Outdoors, and I walked in, and he has a pretty famous barn that he does a lot of work in.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this big picture of his yellow lab. He has a yellow lab. Oh my God, I'm going to be so embarrassed. I can't remember. Named Cap. Holy cow.
The name is Cap?
That dog's name is Cap. I got confused for a second because he used to have a yellow lab named Sackett. That was a really, really amazing dog. And now he has this dog named Cap. And Cap is on the cover of the last, and he has it blown up, and Lee shot it, but he has this cover.
Uh-huh.
It's the last physical magazine of outdoor life. They're not going to print it anymore.
Oh,
it's
wow.
now just going to be online.
I didn't even know that.
So I think that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Literally an outdoor company is promoting more screen time.
Yeah.
Like, we want you on your computers and we want you on these stupid things more.
Yeah.
We're outdoor life, but we want you reading about outdoor stuff on a place that you got to be plugged in.
Yeah, that's
Makes me want to
interesting.
throw up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
because at least with a magazine, you can at least take it out in a tree stand or take it into your tent at night or whatever.
Well, and how do you hand down? Like I have stacks, and I won't run down there and get them right now, but I have stacks of magazines downstairs from the 1960s, 1970s, and I buy them. Actually, family and friends will get them for me as gifts.
Wow.
People, like, if it's my birthday or something, somebody will literally hand me a 1969 Outdoor Life magazine with an article from Jack O'Connor, who's a guy that I find terrible inspiration from. So anyway, I just, I think those are kind of negative things. I think even though where kind of my career has gone, I think, I think outdoor TV has been, that's a tough one, man.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It's just there's a lot of machoism around it.
Sure.
And
Commercialism.
Commercialism and so that I don't know so much about the industry.
Yeah.
But I will say this regarding hunting. I've met, and maybe it's because I am who I am and I'm traveling to the place I'm traveling, but I seem to have met more soulful hunters, more guys that are really doing it for the weather, to get dirt under their fingernails, to see the animals, to experience the animals, to actually they enjoy cutting the animals up and getting them on the table and having these conversations and really intertwining themselves in their ecosystem, really intertwining themselves
the immersive
in the other
experience.
Men and women, that's right, immersing themselves with other hunters, kind of growing this whole relationship with outside and the people around them. I've run into a lot more of that now than I did when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And but I think I think there are some good aspects of the outdoors right now, but it's complicated, man. It's really complicated with our phones,
right,
and computers. It's really complicated.
I feel like for me in my own personal journey, it's been an awesome rebirth as I've opened up and learned about backcountry hunting and going up to Alaska and so, and like you said, it doesn't have to be Alaska. It can be down the road, but getting that
as a mindset,
that immersive experience, or even instead of driving out, walking 300 yards to your stand and then driving home, setting up a tent and being out there for 6 days, even if it is an hour from your house, or in Alaska, it's totally different. So that's been an amazing rebirth for me. It's like I started hunting all over again. It just changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Crazy.
incredible.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago, and I might be making this up, but I've good friends are the gentlemen from Heartland Bowhunter,
Mm-hmm.
Sean Luchtel and Michael Hunsucker. Fantastic guys, great hunters, good families, just solid dudes.
Yeah.
Um, they didn't tell me this, but someone else told me this, and so I don't know that this is verbatim, but years ago, they did I think it was a spring turkey hunting trip, and they literally, and again, I could be lying out my teeth right now, but someone told me this, and maybe it was Sean or Michael himself. Doesn't matter. But years ago, they went on a turkey hunting trip. I think it was a spring turkey hunting trip in like Kansas,
Uh-huh.
which is essentially where they live. And they car camped,
Mm-hmm.
like literally went to, like camped in somebody's farm field, but their trucks were parked right there.
Yeah.
They still had all the amenities that you would have basically at home. They were car camping. They were not roughing it, but they were car camping. And then they went turkey hunting, but they were returning to their tents, after turkey
Mm-hmm.
hunting. And I think it was somebody told me that it was one of their most watched episodes and like most appreciated episodes, and most commented on episodes.
Yeah.
And so because everyone, like, this idea of having a little bit of adventure in your like turkey hunting is great when you can return home and do all those things, but turkey hunting is way better if you're returning to a pop-up tent or to a teepee where you then can have a wood fire and you're talking to the guy or the girl that you're with and you're talking about gobbles you heard or trout that you caught in the middle of the day. It's adding a little bit of adventure to your life, moving your body, moving your mind. And then this, maybe even you're going to ask me about this, but I was just part of a book project with an author named Michael Easter, a book called The Comfort Crisis.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so like,
I forgot that you worked together some on that.
Yeah. So we collaborated on that. So
nice.
we did he wrote an article about me in Men's Health magazine in I think it was May 2018 was the issue. And he came with me on an elk hunt in Nevada.
Yeah.
He came, I was there for 21 days. He was there, I think, for like 4 or 5 days. But he came, we hiked to 10,000 feet or 12,000 feet, whatever it was. We were in the Shell Creek Range, and we'd get up in the morning, like, undo the tent. I'd poke my head out, and morning, Michael. And he's like, freaking, like, gloves, every jacket he has, like hat, just, and it's warm. Like I'm probably getting out of my tent naked, and he's getting out. He's like, hey, and we'd sit down, and I'd make coffee or whatever, and we'd sit there, and sometimes we're sitting there on this rock hill. There's a huge canyon below us. We'd hear a bugle just rip from the bottom. We're sipping on coffee or tea, whatever it was, and he would just ask me questions, man.
Yeah.
So why not just go to the grocery store? And he'd ask me all these questions, and this conversation just went on, right?
Yeah.
And we spent this time together. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And there were 6 of us in our crew. So it's me and my 2 photographers, and then the Justin Bastian, a friend of mine who's an adventure photographer, he was there. That was the first project we worked on together. He's an amazing guy. His assistant, and then Michael. So there's 6 of us. We all snuck within 18 yards of a 6x6 bull elk.
Wow.
A young one, but
yeah, still
like a 3-year-old nonetheless. And so anyway, it was very impactful for everyone involved. Myself, my crew, their crew, and then when he got home, he was just like, he just felt like this energy.
Yeah.
He's like, so he asked me, he's like, what would happen? So if you would have shot that elk, what would have happened? And I said, the arrow would have went in. I said, it would have went through the elk so fast, you'd be like, did you hit him? He's like, no kidding. I said, yeah. And I said, that blood would start shooting, literally dumping out of both sides, because we're using a scalpel to disrupt, to slice and cause major blood loss, but through his arteries, through his lungs. And I said, then he'd run a short distance, probably be confused, his lungs would be filling with blood. He'd look around, he'd go into his parasympathetic nervous system, his pupils would be dilated. Done. And he'd be done, and he would never even really feel pain. I've never been shot by an arrow, but I've 3 or 4 friends that have, and they all have told me that there was no pain, that there was just some pressure. And, they were panicked because they knew what happened. But an animal is not going to know what happened anyway. And so Michael went and started exploring these notions of why he felt so alive and
Hmm.
rejuvenated after coming back from just a few days of being in Nevada. And so he started talking to scientists at all these different universities for that story.
Yeah.
And he come to find out that literally being outside for even just a couple of days
Yeah.
changes our bodies,
Yeah.
changes our minds, our physiology, like literally physically changes how our mind is functioning, how our body is functioning, the things that we're thinking about, how well we're able to articulate what we want to say,
Yeah.
our creativity, our cognitive
Mm.
retention. Um, it's just incredible. And so then he wanted to do a book project. And so then we went to Alaska for 30 days.
Yeah.
And I actually went for 60 days or 40, 50 days. And he went for 30 days. And
Yeah.
incredible. But my whole point is, like, when you are doing these things, whether it be car camping when you're turkey hunting, all the way to going up to the Arctic Circle, like, the reason Michael and Sean did such a beautiful job in car camping on that episode of Heartland Bow is because, you know, they were improving their own experience by hunting that way, and thus it probably came across on camera a little bit more vibrant with a little bit more storytelling.
Yeah.
And then it probably captured the minds of their audience a little bit more, and the people that want to do those things are longing to do those things, and then just naturally engage with their energy. And so the, you know, the episode went up. But that's, I'm only surmising, but
Yeah. No,
yeah,
it's
I think it's really an amazing way to hunt.
totally, man. And when you were saying that, it made me think like we've gotten so detached that like we've come to a place where many people think your natural habitat is in an air conditioned, fluorescent lighted, like hermetically sealed like office building, when really our natural habitat is on that mountainside in those woods, you know, waking up in a tent or whatever. It's like
Yeah,
taking a lion that was in captivity and like dropping him in the natural world, and of course he's going to be more happy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, look at, you know, look at the atrophy that happens to a killer
Killer
whale's
whale.
dorsal fin,
Yeah.
right?
Just depressed.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Our cars, our trucks, our houses, our grocery carts, our everything
Just,
is
yeah.
little minuscule pieces of atrophy in our lives. And so
Mm.
we are now a nation of, I mean, we're fat
Yeah.
as a people.
Oh, yeah.
We're fat. Like, you can take COVID, ball it up, throw it away. You can talk anything you want to talk about, ball it up and throw it away. Let's talk about obesity.
Yeah.
Let's talk about obesity. Like, even alcoholism, drug abuse, whatever else you want to talk about, ball it up, throw it away. Let's talk about obesity.
Yeah.
Because that, not only is it killing people, people aren't even living. People
Yeah.
don't even live their lives. I had a business meeting this morning, and I'm guilty, super guilty. I had a business meeting this morning, met at Caribou Coffee, and I was sitting there. I didn't go pick my coffee beans. I was sitting there having a cup of coffee, meeting with Kyle Nicolite this morning, but I was just watching the people coming in through the door, and it was, I mean, 95% were obese, I would
Yeah.
say, something like that. And those people might think they're existing or living because they get to crush pizza and donuts and get to sit and watch TV and all this stuff. But really, like, I was thinking about this. If there was a guy in line and he was literally like, his tummy was like dripping over his belt,
Yeah.
right? Like, it looked like it was fluid dripping over his belt. And he was a relatively young guy. I'd say he was in his late 40s, early 50s. And I just thought, if you could grab that guy, just be like, hey, Brad, come here. And like, Brad, for the next 2 weeks, you eat only what I tell you to eat, and you come to the gym with me, and you come hiking with me, and you come biking with me, and you come whatever else it is that I'm doing with me.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks, you are never, ever going to want to look back at
yeah.
the Brad that I yanked out of the line in Caribou Coffee. And so,
100%.
yeah, man, I wish people like got to live, like you said, their potential, right?
Yeah. And the crazy thing is I've been Brad. I've been
I
that.
think probably we all have, right? But tell me about yours.
So, yeah, I mean, as I stand right now, I'm 175 pounds. 2 years ago, I weighed 250 pounds.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, and I just got out of rehab, for drug addiction. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been there, and I know firsthand. I'm like a human lab rat. I know firsthand that my life is just exponentially better, and it comes. It's not just the gym. It's been
Yeah.
spiritual discipline and spiritual rebirth and
Yep.
growth. It's been mental and physical, and my gosh, like I just like this adventure I went on last year to Alaska. I mean,
Yeah.
2 years ago, physically, mentally, and spiritually, I would have been completely incapable of even thinking about doing it. And now, like, and just getting back from an adventure like that, you realize like what you are capable of. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Congratulations, man. That is
Thanks.
incredible. Did the weight gain come from you stopping using drugs, or was that weight gain during using
That was
drugs?
part. So I was never like in great shape or like super athletic, and
Okay.
but I was like addict skinny kind of, but not really skinny. I was just like average. And
Yep.
then when I got out and got clean, I would just be like bored at night and just eat everything,
Oh
and
yeah.
still wasn't going to the
Yeah.
gym or doing
Yeah.
anything. And then it just got to the point where I was like, I feel like a slob. I was embarrassed to take my shirt off in front of my own wife, and I was like,
Yeah.
this has
Yeah.
got to change.
Yeah.
And so that got me like half the way. And then my buddy, who's an ex Navy Special Warfare dude in top shape, talks me into going to Alaska. And then he's like, oh, it won't be that bad. And then
Yeah. Well.
I start thinking about like, wait a second, like we're going to be hiking in multiple miles with days of camp. And this dude's ex Navy Special Warfare. Yeah, it's going to be tough. So I
Yeah.
started training my ass off and lost the rest of it. And my life just like the weight went this way. My life was like this.
See.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even if let's just say the weight's going like this, right? And your life is going like this, but even if something happens in there,
Yeah.
car accident, whatever, like you're going to die on your best day.
Yeah.
Like you are like people are always worried like, oh, what if this, what if this, what if this? Are you worried about an airplane crash? No. No, like
Yeah.
I'll deal with it the day it happens, and if I don't die in the wreckage, then we'll deal with fixing it. But I want to push until,
Yeah, man.
and I'm not the first. I'll guarantee you, I'm not. And I had this epiphany a couple of weeks ago. I was doing a podcast with a gentleman. I had this epiphany through talking with Michael Easter from the Comfort Crisis.
Yeah.
Again, this is not revolutionary, but when it hit me like a 2x4. And smart people that are listening to this are going to be like, oh my word, this kid is a moron that it took him this long to think about this. But it really just hit me is that our life expectancy keeps going up. And so people always talk about that as a good thing.
Yeah.
And for the first time ever, it hit me that was a terrible thing. Because the only reason our life expectancy is going up is because our life is going down.
Yeah.
We are exerting less energy. We are putting ourselves in less dangerous situations. We are now cultivating a alphabet of pharmaceuticals to handle every bump and bruise and inflammation. And instead of, I'll be very careful with my words, but it just seems that our hearts might be beating a little bit longer in time. But I think our quality of life
is garbage.
Who we are as a person, garbage. Like I think it's dead. I don't think it's dying. I think it's dead. We're human beings, right?
Yeah.
We're strong. We can carry backpacks. We can shoot bows, shoot rifles. We can fight wars. We can dig out fields. We can build barns. We can fix cars. We can do all of this stuff. And yet, we still have massive portions of our population that are unwilling to engage in any of this. Like I see kids all the time I just saw some kids, and God bless their creativity. But I was doing a mountain bike ride the other night, and I was going up this hill, and there were a bunch of kids hanging out next to this river. And I was just thinking to myself, if kids from the 1920s or early 1900s could see these kids,
Oh yeah.
they would just be like, what planet did you come from? And can I see your spaceship?
Yeah.
Because these kids are wearing like clothing made out of stuffed animals, and I'm all about expression. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about piercings and tattoos. I'm not saying they were weird. I'm not saying it all, but it just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just a little microcosm of,
For sure.
like, I wish I could sit all these kids down and be like, let me tell you what I know.
Well, they were probably
Let me tell you what's
soft and
coming.
they were probably soft and fluffy too, which
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, like
yeah.
one of the kids or two of the kids were relatively skinny. The rest of them were, I would consider, I'm not a doctor, but borderline morbidly obese.
Yeah.
And I would say all of them were in their teens,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even mid-teens.
Yeah, it's sad,
Yeah.
man. And like going back to what you said earlier too, like I made this decision a long time ago. I got lost along the way, and well, the world told me a lie of what really life and adventure was. But I've always had this sense that I would rather live to be 50 or 60 and have stories to tell and have lived a full, awesome life than be a soft, fat 98-year-old with having done no living.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. So let me ask you, if I may ask about your drug abuse, like how do those guys, the guys that are peddling the narcotics, the drugs, how do those guys convince guys like you to take this trip?
So, like I said, going back to like the lie I was told. So I always had in my heart this deep-seated need for adventure, right? And like living life to the fullest. Somewhere along the line, the enemy, I would just say, in how I see it, the spiritual forces of evil, the devil, whatever you want to say, convinced me through the world that the way to live my life to the fullest and get the most out of my life was to live this rock and roll party lifestyle. And I was a musician in a band and all that in college, and that was kind of the lie that got it started. And it just started small, started with alcohol, then the weed, and then started the pills, and then just progressed and got worse. To the point where I was, I guess it's okay to say this publicly, but I had figured out how to order fentanyl on the dark net. So I wasn't even going to drug dealers anymore. It was like showing up in my mailbox.
Yeah.
Through like Bitcoin, and dude, it was crazy. Yeah. But anyway, I don't like, so I guess to answer your question, it wasn't really like any person or drug dealer that kind of talked. It was like, I see it as evil and a lie being told to me. And so then what happened was, as you get more into addiction, that desire that God put in my heart for adventure and these things I'm living now became so far out of reach because I was addicted to a substance and living this horrible life. It made me even more heartsick. And then I would use more to cover that. And then I got even further from the true life and adventure. And it was a cycle of guilt and shame and more use, and that taking me further and more and more and more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I grew up in a house with drug addicts. And so, like, I saw this stuff kind of firsthand. And that's why I was really curious, because when I grew up, so I'm 46. So my siblings, I was born in 74. So they were, it's embarrassing for me to even admit this, but I can't even tell you how old my brother or sister are, but they're several years older than I am. But I always saw their addiction, and not to get down a rabbit hole, but I always saw their addiction coming from friends of theirs who were super charismatic. Like kind of the life of the party type guy came and made sure everyone was having a good time. Like he was having a good time, and things just kind of escalated and got. Yeah. And then from there, I saw it firsthand where it was everything was a bad day, and it was never their fault. It was everyone else's fault that there was a bad day. And so I saw this stuff when I was growing up, and I was just always curious. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's amazing that you freaking buried that demon. That is a
Yeah.
That
Well,
is a big one, man. That is a big one to put behind you.
yeah. And I couldn't have done it without God. So I had to give some glory there. It definitely took hard work on my part too.
Yeah,
But
more than you realize.
yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like? So putting all that behind you,
Hmm.
and then when you got to Alaska, did a bus drop you off? Did you guys park a vehicle? Like, how did you start hiking? And
Yeah.
what I'm curious, I know this is a podcast with me, but I want to know
No,
about
it's
you.
cool. Yeah.
So like, how'd you get to Alaska?
Yeah.
Where'd you land? Where did you go? What were your first impressions? Because my first trip to Alaska was in '96.
Hmm.
I've missed, I think, 1 or 2 years since. Several years I've went multiple times.
Yeah.
What was your experience going?
Yeah, man. So, oh man, it was literally, it sounds so cliche, but it was life changing.
Oh yeah.
Like where I am right now, sitting here with this podcast, talking to Donnie Vincent would not have happened if I had not booked that trip to Alaska. None of
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
So my friend actually was like a friend of a friend. Didn't know him that well, but as you probably know, it can be hard to find people to commit to a serious adventure like this.
Yeah.
So he messaged me kind of, one of probably 10 people he messaged. Hey, thinking about doing this caribou thing in Alaska next year. Are you interested? And I was like, yes, I'm interested, because it was just, it was a perfect timing. I feel like it was God's timing. I had already decided I am doing this Western hunting thing. Like, I'm clean, I'm getting in better shape, I'm doing it. And then he messaged me like, hey, want to go to Alaska? Yes. Because that was one of the things that I talked myself out of it before, was like, oh, I don't understand the tags, and it's hard and whatever. I'll just stick to whitetails. Anyway, so I said yes. And then that was like a year of just transformation, of training, of learning everything I could about backpack hunting. Just total transformation. And then, so then we flew up there, flew into Fairbanks, and then rented a U-Haul.
Yeah.
Because you can save thousands of dollars from renting a U-Haul instead of a 4x4. I found that, and I was like, I thought I was so smart, but apparently I'm not the first one that's done that.
No, it's smart. Did you look into any of the other rentals?
Yeah, we looked at a truck, and it's like $3-4 grand, and I was like, dude, we could just rent a U-Haul van.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
I did one year where literally we considered buying a truck.
Oh yeah.
The rental was so expensive.
Yeah.
We considered just buying a truck and then just leaving it with a friend when we left.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So we got that U-Haul van. We nicknamed it Huey, and we drove from Fairbanks to Tok, and then Tok drove through Chicken almost to Eagle. And I don't want to necessarily name the control.
Don't.
But it was an area where there's no motor vehicles allowed between Chicken and Eagle.
Yeah.
That's pretty specific. But anyway, and it was just like, as we're driving in, like, it feels like, in high school, like we're about to go to a wrestling match, or I played lacrosse. So like about to be a big lacrosse game, like kind of scary, excited, like, whoa, what are we doing? And it was a culmination of a year of training and prep, and then we just we found the spot, and it was like, let's freaking do this, and we strap it on, and started booking. And the first thing that comes to my mind is my glutes just started burning really bad, because I still was carrying a 10-pound rifle, and I hadn't completely gotten my system totally dialed, so I had a lot of extra weight.
It's really hard hiking.
It is. And that other thing too is, like, I trained well, but I come from flatland, so I mean, it's hard to really train for mountains. But I found that, like, strengthening your glutes is actually way more important than strengthening your quads. And I think I spent too much time on my quads. But anyway, and then the thing that was just amazing to me, and still why I love it up there, is, in the lower 48, even if you're in this huge wilderness, if you keep going long enough, like, you're gonna hit a highway at some point, or pretty much. I mean. Or,
you're gonna walk into civilization.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
Out there, it's like, dude, you could walk until you probably die, and you will
Oh, you
not.
will.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you will not find anybody else. There will be
Yeah.
animals out there that will live and die their entire life and never see a human. Like,
Yep.
it's just freaking magical, man. And so just
Yeah.
like the possibility of that and like the adventure is just that's why, like, if I can afford it, my wife will let me, I will go back every year myself.
Yeah. And you can't afford not to go.
Yes, true.
Yeah, I mean that's really what a boy. I mean, you might have to take your kid with you. You might have to take your wife with you. You might have to go for a shorter time. You might have to hunt black bears, but you can't afford not to
Yeah,
go.
no, I
Right? It's
agree.
so funny. Like we have this hierarchy of like animal worth. You know, people are like, "You going sheep hunting? Are you going moose hunting?" Are
Yeah.
you know, like I'll tell people that, like I really love caribou hunting, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're not going moose hunting?" And but really, if I were to sell you on this black bear,
Oh
right?
yeah.
These black bears are delicious, and they have the blackest, softest, longest fur. And I made it $30,000 to hunt a black bear. That would be the only thing that you could think about. And people would be
Oh
like, "Oh
yeah.
my god, I'm going to Alaska black bear hunting." But the fact that they're very inexpensive to hunt, you can get multiple tags, you can shoot multiple bears. People are like, "Oh yeah, you're going on a black bear hunt." But
Oh
it's
yeah.
all just it's your mindset of like, where you're going, what you're doing.
Now I'd go on a black bear hunt today. I'd
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so incredible, man. It's so incredible. And so that's really cool. So how was your I might be doing this drive actually.
Okay.
How was your drive from Fairbanks to Toke?
Oh, not bad at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the to Toke, I mean, it's all paved road if I'm remembering
Yeah.
correctly. But then, yeah, once you start getting, about half the way to Chicken, it turns to paved, and I mean unpaved. Sorry.
Yeah.
But even then, it was not bad at all. I mean, we're in a 2-wheel drive, van.
Yeah.
But the roads were, and I was getting kind of nervous about that too. But
Yeah.
no, the roads were fine, and we
Yeah.
were almost all the way clean to Eagle.
Okay. And were you guys were you successful?
So, short answer is no, but the long answer is yes. We were successful. I changed my.
Okay.
We did not kill a caribou, but we were successful. But so we spent on the pack in. We looked down and a nice bull caribou, full sprint, going the opposite way from us. It was strange, but it was opening. It was a day before opener, so we couldn't shoot.
Okay. Yeah.
We get in, find our camp spot. I am not kidding you, man. You could not walk 2 feet without stepping in caribou droppings or tracks. I mean, they were there, but
Just there.
just there. It must have been a week, maybe 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was wolf kills, and we heard wolves, but they had been there, but they just weren't anymore. So we stayed there 3 or 4 days. Beautiful. Killed some ptarmigan, ate some ptarmigan. Delicious. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then we decided we need to cut our losses, and we headed up to the
different area.
Steese Highway area.
Okay.
And we knew we were going to be competing with locals on ATVs, but we just said, what, screw it, we got to do it. So, but we got in as deep as we could and found a spot where we had, midweek, had it basically to ourselves.
Yeah.
And I got in a stalk on one that in retrospect we think was a young bull, but I was I was 120 yards from it, but it was like 11 o'clock at night. We just couldn't be 100% certain it wasn't a cow. So we decided not to pull the trigger.
Okay.
And my buddy had the year before he'd gone with another friend, and same thing happened. He was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And his buddy's like, screw it, and shot, and it was a cow. And so he had a bad taste in his mouth. And in retrospect, I wish I had done a little bit more research on identifying them instead of kind of relying on him. That's one area where I kind of failed, because I wish I had just, but whatever. Anyway. And then we had another stalk. On the way out, we had a young bull come from 1,000 yards, walk 15 feet from us. Yeah. And I could see the color of his eyes.
Oh yeah.
But same thing. We just weren't 100% sure if it was a bull with undescended testicles or a cow. Yeah. And we didn't shoot. And it turns out there was a game warden just around the corner, down where our truck was. So it was good. But anyway, we did not harvest one. That's the long story.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. I've been on. Oh man, I've come home from Alaska without an animal many times,
Yeah.
many times. And I mean, like, some of those were really big, long, expensive expeditions.
Mm.
And you know, I went on a caribou hunt one time out of the Arctic. I floated a long river,
Mm.
and I ended up running into these guys on my hunt that were from my hometown here in
Oh,
Hudson,
whoa.
Wisconsin.
Wow.
Yeah. And I ended up talking to them at the beginning of the hunt. We didn't know that we were going in the same area. They were flying into the mountains to hunt. You know, we were in the airport and we started talking. And they said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Hudson." They said, "Oh, we're from Hudson." I said, "Oh, man." And I said, "Where do you guys hunt?" They said, "We're flying into the mountains to hunt caribou. We do it every year." I go, "Oh, fantastic." And I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm flying into a river at the head of the mountains." You know, we didn't talk about exactly where. And I said, "Then I'm floating out like 100 miles or whatever." And they said, "Oh, that sounds exciting. Cool." And lo and behold, we end up literally in the same spot.
Wow.
Okay. And so, like, I'm still, you know, I'm camping like a mile or two below them. I got dropped off on a lake. They got dropped off on a gravel bar. And so, but we ended up, believe it or not, we ended up talking at our airplane sites, and we developed a kind of Morse code of like, as you guys are successful, tell me, like, every night at a certain time, if we're not on an active stock, we'll go up to these knobs.
Nice.
And communicate with one another.
That's cool.
And we did that. And lo and behold, so I was there for 17 days. They were there for 10 days. Neither one of us killed a caribou. We saw a couple of caribou. We saw a lot of moose, a lot of wolves, and we saw a couple of caribou. They saw 0 caribou. Wow. And then I talked to them afterwards, and they had done that hunt something like 13 years in a row. And their worst year, they had shot like 5 bulls. Was their worst year ever.
Yeah. Usually
they were shooting 8 bulls, but their worst year was 5 bulls. This was back when you could shoot 2.
Yeah. Okay.
You used to be able to shoot 2. But it just goes to show, like, I was in this spot for 17 days. I floated over 100 miles. Yeah. They were in the spot for 10 days. And this is the exact spot. They fly to this spot every single year, and they shot multiple bulls every year. But this year, the caribou weren't there. So it's just caribou nomadic. You know, they moved. And so, I mean, you guys should still and that's super, super awesome. You're going to Kodiak this year. Yeah. Like, the deer hunting there it is stupid.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Dude, I'm really looking forward to it. But I gotta be honest, I am still like super itching for that caribou too. Like when I got like to tell you, when I see guys like posting pictures of bulls they shot and stuff, like it definitely hurts a little inside still.
Have you, if you can afford it, have you considered using a pilot?
Yeah. So we're flying in for this Kodiak thing.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'm not against it. Yeah, it comes down to money, but yeah, maybe
it's expensive. Airplanes are expensive. There's no 2 ways around it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Basically, it comes down to, will the wife let me do it?
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, dude, she bought me this trip to Kodiak for Christmas. Like, how awesome is that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Really cool.
I was like, can I go back to Alaska, please? And she was like, no. But she had been secretly working with my buddy behind my back and got us this trip. It was amazing.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, you'll have a great time.
Yeah, man. So, but I still need my caribou. At some point.
Has your buddy been to Kodiak?
Yeah, so he got the bug several years ago, the Alaska, and he's gone back every single year. Yeah. And he's actually moving there. And here's the cool thing. He's the guy that's ex-Navy Special Warfare. He has his pilot's license.
Oh, yeah.
So he's moving there. He'll be a resident probably by 2022, and his like goal is to get a cub. So there's a good chance I'll have a friend and hunting partner who lives in Alaska and has an aircraft in like 2 or 3 years.
You want some advice?
Yes.
Help him buy the airplane.
Good advice.
Say, hey, let me help you buy that cub.
I like that. Yeah. I'm writing that one down. Then I have like a legit stake in the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you have an interest in his plane. Yeah.
That's a great one. So, man, this has been really fun. I got to ask you. I don't know if anyone's asked you much about it before, but it's kind of one of the themes of the podcast. Um, what's your opinion, or what's your philosophy? I mentioned God earlier, in the spiritual side of hunting. What's your connection to the spiritual? Like, how do you connect? Do you believe in God? What do you believe? That kind of stuff.
Well, I feel like I feel I've always told. I shouldn't say I've always told, but I've always felt like I've told people like I don't sense this connection,
Hmm.
but it's really not true at all. I really sense an immense connection. It is, I always like people would ask me about my spirituality when I was hunting or whatever, and I would just kind of look around and be like, no, I don't. I'm not feeling anything.
Hmm.
Like I don't. Yeah, what's it feel like? Is your skin supposed to burn or like what? But I was misunderstanding essentially the question and the connection
Hmm.
because the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I thought about my drive to be outside, my drive to be walking through the woods, to be
Mm-hmm.
climbing mountains, to be looking for sheep or moose or snakes or frogs or going fishing, whatever it is. Like it's so entertaining to me to see these animals, to engage with these animals, to be an archer, to be a rifleman, um, to feel the weight on a backpack and to like climb, like you'll get there. But when you shoot a big bull caribou and you've got the good portion of him in your back and you've got his full hide and you just have those antlers sticking up and you get to the top of a mountain and you stop, like you sit down on a rock or you drop your pack and you're holding on to his tops while you're just surveying the scene. Like that's the connection,
Mm.
right? That is the spiritual connection. That's the relationship, is the word I like to use.
Yeah.
That really, you feel it in every part of your system. I feel it in every part of
It's
my
what you were
system.
made
And
for.
so, yeah, what I thought was an addiction, what I thought was, like, yeah, companies identify for all sorts of different manners, but what I thought was just something that I needed to do really was ingrained in my DNA. Really understanding who we are,
Mm.
really understanding what it means to be a human being, what we are as a population, what we are meant to do with wildlife in our wild places. And I used to think that stewardship, land stewardship, conservation, the idea of preservation with animals and preservation of wetlands and river corridors and prairie land and forests. I thought all of this was a responsibility of ours as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've come to realize over time that it's a responsibility of ours because we are animals,
Mm.
because we are in these systems. These systems are as important for our lifeline, our life bread, as we are to these systems. So everything is intergrained. We are that. We are that raindrop that comes down and
Mm.
hits and finds its way into the groundwater, finds its way into the ocean, finds its way into the Gulf of Mexico. Like we are part of that system. We've lost our way in the manner of we get to fly on airplanes. We have opposable thumbs. We get to drive cars. We have radio stations. We have movie stars. And so in my opinion, there's been a digression or a regression or a loss of a theme, if you will. But so I've never been a terribly spiritual person, and in the same sense, been maybe one of the more spiritual people I've ever met, because as I met with people who are hunters and fishermen,
Yeah.
and they told me about their ride involving hunting and fishing, I never identified with it.
Hmm.
When I did find somebody that I identified with, I really would sink my hooks into them.
Hmm.
And so, and like, you tell me about caribou hunting, you tell me about the caribou, you tell me about what your experiences were. And if I buy into what you're telling me your experiences were, like I'm all in, way in. If I'm not, then I'm way out.
Yeah,
I'm all out. And so like, yeah, I think it lives really strongly within me,
totally.
and having that energy flow between systems and between human beings.
Yeah.
And I just think I was born way too late would be my,
Well,
you know,
I think you're a spiritual guy. You seem like you are.
I definitely feel connected. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I've had things happen to me that were, I spent a lot of time with, I get made fun of over this, which is funny. If you're going to make fun of me for something and this is what you're going to make fun of me of, great. But I've spent a lot of time with wolves, a lot of time.
Mm,
I've been multiple times in my life, I've spent extended periods of time in and amongst a pack of
yeah.
wolves. But I've also had other times where just a single wolf and I will bump into one another
Hmm.
in very close quarters. I'm talking less than 20 yards, stare at each other. I always am talking to them, and I'll talk to them and like more to kind of figure out what they're doing, but just their eyes and their presence. And I get that way with a lot of things, but I don't know. I just feel it,
Yeah.
um, some people have made fun of me for not killing wolves, and I'm not against killing wolves. And I'm not even saying I wouldn't kill a wolf. I just haven't killed a wolf yet.
Yeah.
But I've had like 50 opportunities to kill a wolf, and I haven't done it yet. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but
Yeah.
anyway. But that's kind of my spiritualism. That's my connection, man. Like um, that's where I live.
Totally, man.
That's where I live my entire life.
The Wolf Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And like, I just feel like it needs to be said. Earlier, we were talking about coming home from Alaska with no animal, and like when I was thinking about Alaska, I was like, man, that would be a disaster. And yeah, I still have that like, oh, I really want to get my caribou in me.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys I think are scared of that, but like it doesn't matter. It was still like
No.
still being there, feeling a connection. The only blood we spilled was a ptarmigan, and that was still amazing. But even without that, just the experience and being there in the wild,
Yeah.
and it'll change you, and that connection you're talking about.
If you go to Alaska for an animal, you're going to be really disappointed because most of the people that go hunting in Alaska come home with nothing.
Yeah,
If you walk through the Anchorage airport or the Fairbanks airport at the end of September, you will see a lot of sad faces, a lot. And you will talk to these guys. If you see somebody wearing camouflage or looking like a hunter and he's got a super frown on, go talk to him. And he will blame the pilot.
yeah,
He will blame the weather. He will blame the moose. He will blame the outfitter. He will blame the booking agent.
yeah,
Everybody but himself.
and forget the adventure he just had.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even enter their mind. They want a 70-inch bull
Yeah,
or nothing, and they want a friend of mine who I won't name him, but he's an outfitter, really successful outfitter, and he told me this last time I was hunting with him. We were laying in a tent, we were socked in, and he just said to me, like, man, I love your attitude. Like, we were socked in for days. We we're just having a blast. He's like, I love that you're not panicked that we're being socked in for days. I'm like, no, it's fine. He was telling me about a hunter that he had, and this guy was on a moose grizzly bear combo hunt in a really good area. And my buddy was talking to him, and he's like, and they had bad weather. This day they had bad weather, and so this guy said to my buddy, he goes, yeah, like I just want an 8-foot grizzly bear and a 70-inch moose. And my buddy said, well, we don't even have, that's great news because we don't even have to leave the tent because that's not happening. Like, that happens 1% of the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so you see those photos, you see the magazine article, but if you're going, you should go to Alaska. I don't want to discourage anyone from going to Alaska because I think it's the lifeblood, right?
Yeah.
The lifeline. But when you go to Alaska, from the moment your airplane touches down to the rental car, to the restaurants you eat at, to the fly shops you go into, if you're lucky enough to make it into, are you flying into Anchorage this year?
Yes.
Go down to Barney's. Have you ever heard of Barney's?
Mm-mm.
Oh yeah, go to Barney's.
Okay.
It's not far from the airport. It's a Barney's ski chalet. It's a little hunting store owned by a guy named Kevin, and they make the most badass external frame backpacks. They're amazing. And it's the coolest little hunting store you'll ever go in your entire life.
Done.
They have
I scheduled a whole day to hang out in Anchorage, so done.
go to Barney's.
Done.
Go to Barney's. Go see Kevin. Tell him I say hello.
Okay.
It's incredible. Like they'll have all the best boots and backpacking stoves. They have all the best everything, and they have really cool animals in there. It's an amazing place. But like you do these things. You go there, and you need to just live every experience.
Yes.
And if you have a weather day, enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Go outside the tent, take a look around, bring a good book, go poop in the fog or go poop in the rain, hike up on the hill anyways and look for bears or look for moose or look for caribou, and never, for God's sakes, never stop looking.
Yeah.
Like if it's daylight, get up well before the sun, eat your breakfast, get your gear on, get to the top of a hill, go take a look around. You'll be amazed what you see, whether it be a wolverine catching a ptarmigan going past you, or whether you see the northern lights, or whether you see a black bear. Like I got up on a black bear 2 years ago, and I had a black bear tag. I had a black bear tag. I was holding a rifle in a caliber that nobody's ever killed an animal with. It's a brand new caliber.
Oh, cool.
With a brand new ammunition that nobody's ever killed an animal with.
That stuff I've been seeing on your social media?
Yeah, the True Velocity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm literally holding, I have one of their test guns with me, a Remington Model 706.8 TVCM. And I'm sitting over this bear. He's not very far away at all. I mean, sub 100 yards. And it's a big, huge boar. It's a frosty, really cold, blustery afternoon. Like the sun is getting ready to go down. And we thought he was so big, we thought he was a grizzly bear. And he was digging in these rocks, and he's eating all these blueberries, and he's eating some ground squirrels or whatever it is that he was doing. Like I had this rifle. All I have to do is click the safety off, and boom, and I'll be the first guy to kill an animal with this, whatever that means. But I just sat there watching him, and this is the valley that doesn't get hunted very much. And I just thought, if I shoot him, he's dead. If I shoot him, I'm going to have a gorgeous black bear hide hanging on my wall. I'm going to have 100 pounds or 150 pounds, however. I mean, he's a big bear. He's like 400-pound bear. I'll have however many 100 pounds of meat, which I love bear meat. I'll have this beautiful skull that I'll, keep in my collection. And I will have been the first hunter to kill an animal with this cartridge. And, voila. And I sat there, and then I did the other side of the coin. If I don't shoot him, he's going to continue being a bear. He's going to hibernate right here because it's the end of the season. And he's getting fat. He's an old boar. He's lived in these valleys his whole life. He's probably denned here every year. And if I just don't squeeze the trigger, he just gets to get on. Like Alaska continues for him. His life continues. Yeah. And he very well may die of old age. He may starve to death. He may fall off a cliff and fall to his death. A bigger bear may kill him and cannibalize him. A moose might kill him. A cow might stomp him this spring when he's trying to kill her calf. Yeah. Nature will take its course, right? He'll drown trying to cross a river. It's harsh, but that's the reality of being a wild animal. And I decided not to shoot. And I walked away, and I felt so good about walking away. Not that there's a right or a wrong, or I'm not bragging. I'm not bragging. Like, in the next week, I went through this whole yin and yang process. Like, I really wish I would have shot that bear. And then I was really happy that I didn't. And I really wish, and this is the conundrum that I live in my mind. And I just think if people are going to go to Alaska, like, you need to go there with this conundrum. Yeah. Like, you have a bloodthirst right now, and I totally understand it, and I've had it and have it many times. I've had it many times, but you're like, I need to go caribou hunting. Yeah. But as you caribou hunt, still you will harbor that. Like you went through it this year. You didn't know if that was a young bull or a antlered cow. Yeah. So you're like, and you made the right decision. Like if there's any indecision, just abort mission. Yeah. Man. Like you don't want to mess. We all need to hunt as though the world is watching. Yeah. Because every little decision you make, like even if you would have shot that and it was a cow, you got a ticket, you got a confiscate, you had to pay a fine, it goes against your record. Well, now when anti-hunters or non-hunters are compiling statistics to be against us, they can be like, yeah, 112 cows were accidentally shot by hunters. You don't want to be one of those 112 guys.
Right.
Like, you want to make the right decision. And the accidents always happen. That stuff happens.
Yeah.
But we do the best we can, and we continue to ask ourselves difficult questions.
Totally.
But if you're going to Alaska, you did it exactly right. Pour yourself into your body, pour yourself into your mind, to which I would say to you, learn the biology of your animals. So now that you're going to Kodiak, learn your lesson from the caribou. Learn as much as you can about black-tailed deer.
Yeah.
Sitka black-tailed deer. And I don't mean ask your buddies. I mean, read in a book. What are Sitka blacktails doing right now? Where are they on the mountain? Okay. Oh, they're at the top of the mountain. Are you going in August?
Yes.
Okay, they're at the top of the mountain. Okay, well, figure that out. Like, what are the plants that they like to eat this time of year?
That's great
Where
advice.
are they bedding? What type of slopes are they eating on? Do they like to bed with the wind in their face? Do they like to bed with the wind at their back? Like, figure out how they look at hunters. Do I have to stay in the shadows? Do I have to not move that much? Like, learn everything you can about them. It'll make you far more interested in them. Start looking at photos of them. Look at how their antlers ride on their head. Look at the two white throat patches, their big dark foreheads, their little stout, like 50-gallon drum bodies with toothpick legs. Pick it all apart. Take them nose to tail. Look at all their physiology. Pick your shooting zone. And then when you get there, like when you see one, you're going to be like, wow. And already, like, whether you pull the trigger or not, do all this work on your body, do all this work on your mind. And when you get there, you hike to the top of the mountain, you set up your camp. That's your first wow. That's your first, like, I did it. Yeah. I'm here. I hiked to the top. I'm camping. And then when you start seeing animals, that's your second wow. And really, those two wows, you're done, man. That's it. Yeah. That's the success. You're already done.
You won.
You're done. Now, if you find one that you want to shoot it.
Cherry on top.
Eat it. Cherry on top. Like, people always say, like, oh, it's a frosting on the cake. I'm just here for the experience. That's a great sentence, but live it. Embody it. Like, breathe it. Understand it. Because if you're lying to yourself, like, oh, I really love eating beets. No, you don't. Beets suck. Really live it with yourself, and then you can actually change your relationship with what you're doing, and then you can change your relationship. You already have. Yeah. You've done the hardest relationship shift of probably in your life, aside from losing a loved one or whatever. But you're like, I wish I could give people something to eat, or tap them on the head, and that they get to see and feel what I'm feeling. Because if they did, like, they would never stop, and they would always be searching. And I had a hunt 2 years ago. It went horrible for me, and I couldn't find my rhythm, and I was letting other things get into my head, and it really poisoned my trip, and never again. It'll never happen again. But I still enjoyed many things on that. Like, when I'd see particular animals and weather, and a couple of times, like, the guy I was hunting with would take a nap, and so I'd hike to the top of the mountain while he was sleeping. And just like, one day, that trip, I hiked to the top of the mountain one day, and a huge fat sow grizzly bear walked past me with two cubs.
Oh, wow.
Just feeding. And that's what I hang my hat on that trip. I saw that, and I was just like, man, it was a cold, blustery day, and I was just sitting there drinking a cup of tea, and I just watched. She was just an awesome mom, and I could see, like, her cubs would get out, and they, like, I think it's always the boars are always a pain in the ass, but the boar would go explore too far, and then she'd pop up, and you'd see her, and then he'd come back. It's just,
that's awesome, man.
I'm easily entertained, and I think you probably understand that.
Yeah, that's such great advice, man. I'm really glad you said that about just learning everything about the animals and learning from that mistake. And yeah, man, it's so good. And that's why this shed back here, I found this returning to camp from my stock on that one I almost shot but wasn't sure, and that's the logo for the podcast.
Oh, right on. Yep.
It's that's the shed.
Yeah,
it's
really
just because it's emblematic to me of.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't have to be Alaska. I do recommend everyone go to Alaska. I think you would too. But Adventure, find adventure,
Yeah.
get uncomfortable, find adventure. And I mean, we were made for it. So
Made we need it to live.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, thanks, man. It's been a really awesome conversation. I'm glad we got a chance to connect.
I
And
appreciate the offer. I really do.
yeah, I don't want to hold you too much longer. So, but where can, well, I do want to ask you just lastly, any other advice for me as a, aspiring content creator, filmmaker, heading to Kodiak, making some films this fall?
Honesty, just honesty.
Yeah.
Never stop filming. Try to capture the whole day, even when you're beat.
Mm,
Grab a camera. I don't care if you have to hold it right here and talk into the barrel, but honesty. Don't try not to mimic anyone else's work other than, like, obviously you're going to. Everything we all do is something that we've seen in someone else's
sure.
work, but just use your own words, your own sentences, your own experience. If you're having a miserable time, talk about how miserable it is. If you're having a great time, talk about how great it is.
Yeah.
Really, I think just the more honest you can be with yourself and with the camera lens, the more people are going to want to watch it.
Totally. Cool,
Yeah.
man.
Mhm.
Well, awesome. I'll let you go, man. But again, thank you for your time and really enjoyed talking.
Appreciate it.